Well, 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 it looks like Bungie has to eat another one, this time around with Legendary Shards. And it's interesting because I was actually a fan of Bruno's TWABs up until this point. How silly he put it that they were going to be taking away thousands and thousands of our shards and hours of time farming and saving and deleting legendary weapons. And they did it in such like a nonchalant kind of a haha funny way that wasn't really funny, especially because the legendary shards are not going to be replaced by anything. They're going to just be straight taken away. They're going to be deprecated. There's not going to be a trade in. I could understand if they said, you can have the legendary shards. They're going to take up slots in your inventory, and we're going to move them to your inventory from the main section. And until you turn them into Rahul, they're going to be taking up slots and being an inconvenience for you. I could understand that, but there's going to be no trade in. They're just going to be completely deprecated, gone, nothing that you could do to get your glimmer out of them. And so the community first started by spreading around how to spend your shards, because we're going to have to spend them down by the end of the season, buying phantasmal fragments, going and grabbing the 400 shard ascendant alloy every week from Rahul, as well as buying the overly expensive enhancement prism and enhancement cores that are there that normally you would tell never anybody to buy. Like, why would you spend that many shards on those particular items when you can get them in other ways? But now there's a reason to spend on your shards, and they're the least effort way to get those particular items. You can convert them however you'd like. You can convert them up to prisms. You can convert them down to more enhancement cores, should I say, if you're low on cores like myself. And so that's going to be the next thing to look out for, right? Like, what are they going to do with enhancement cores if we stack those up? Especially now that we know to take phantasmal fragments and convert legendary shards into phantasmal fragments, and to carry about 3 stacks, 4 stacks of those. That's going to be free glimmer, tens of thousands of glimmer every time you turn in a few of those. So that's going to be the next way that we're going to store our hours of progress. But we only had to do this because Bungie decided that they were going to try to take away our shards. And so I think that was inappropriate. I think the way that they went about talking about how it's, oh, this silly little purple spiky things that you may have thousands or tens of thousands, and how it's unfair for people that are new that haven't put in those hours to have those shards, but the people that have put in the hours have the shards, and how we're going to make things expensive enough to keep the people with deep pockets spending their shards and filling these purchases while not hurting the little man, where instead you could just say, let's reduce the cost of shards, and that way we don't hurt the little man and forget about how many shards the veterans have, because it doesn't matter. If we have enough shards that we can't spend them, if we wanted to, we can't even spend them down through normal play, then why even care? Like, what does it even matter to you at Bungie that we have tens of thousands of shards that we can't even spend? Again, it's just to keep people in engagement, to keep people in the rat race, kind of how Mylan pointed out, if you've seen his Mylan's Moaning Minute this week, about how he sees it as the developer trying to figure out ways to create this false engagement, to create this rat race for people. You get rid of this banked currency that everybody has, and they're going to have to spend more time getting glimmer now, and more time getting enhancement cores and things that they didn't have banked up before because they could just buy it with shards. And so, again, I understand that that's the goal. I understand that that's the idea, but you don't have to come out in the TWAB and speak so casual about it as if it's not a big deal to people who have tens of thousands of those shards stored up, and who have kind of set themselves up, whether it be a glitch or whether it be efforts of sitting there and dismantling things over and over again, through their efforts and time and their ingenuity. If it's something that's done in a different way than sitting and doing it yourself, there's an automated way and so on and so forth, people have done it, so be it. They figured it out, they put it to use, and they did it in a way that didn't hurt anybody else. The only thing that it hurt was player engagement on Bungie's side, and like, we as players care about your player engagement stat whenever you have been under-delivering on purpose for this long with your content. Right now, this season, they have started to just barely deliver, and I know it was in the pipeline, but it's taken this long, meaning that they started to fix things back when we started complaining, and it's now just getting to us. But then they still have the audacity to say, we're still going to take your legendary shards, and we're not going to give you any kind of currency trade for it. And what's even going to be more annoying is we're going to spin down our shards, and then they're going to actually have a situation where they're like, well, we're going to give you a currency trade for it that's some valuable thing down the road, and we've already spent our shards on all these other things, which is like a little haha on Bungie's side, like, yeah, we're giving you your trade that you wanted, but because we've created this FOMO situation where you have to get rid of your shards now, or you're not going to actually get use out of them. You burnt through them all, which is what we wanted anyways, which would be also devious and also inappropriate. So that was very frustrating to see in the TWAB that happened, and then right behind that, the best glitch ever came right behind that, and I'm so glad of the timing of it, that people picked it up and they discovered it right after the TWAB, because it was just like this direct, immediate response that was fabulous to see, that the community just said, you know what, Bungie, F you trying to take our shards, F you with all the way you've been treating us and this poor delivery of products and these drip-fed content and the things that we're not happy with, and yeah, you kind of addressed it, but here you go and you're taking one step forward and you're taking 10 steps back, in my opinion, based on the way that they're behaving with the TWAB and the things that they did. And now all of a sudden now we have a way to get revenge a little bit on Bungie and the devs and kind of stick it to them with these funny weapons, because now we have these weapons where we're just absolutely melting bosses. As you can see, I was going to make a guide for the Nightfall last week, and I didn't make a guide because there was no point, because this is what the boss looked like.
I've run sims on this before. I never got it to work right.
And so you can see that the boss was turned into a joke. Yes, I was running Invis Hunter, which helped still get the dunks in, but one clip of your Tarntation grenade launcher that was like a shotgun, and the boss was at its next health phase, and then one more clip and the boss was dead. I mean, it was such a joke, and I'm so glad that it was also available, these funny gun situations, because it took me forever to get the 4 times a Tarm and Vorpal roll for the Warden's Law, because that's the gun that you obviously want for PvE. I mean, you mix it with the Hunter and the Lucky Pants, and it's a very potent gun. It's one of the most devastating primary weapons, DPS-wise, normal guns before the funny guns that were available. And so I was able to run like 30 of those Nightfalls, and max out my enhancement prisms, and max out my golf balls. Like, I have 30 now, which before I only had maybe like 6 or 7 of them before this whole thing. So it worked out in our benefit that during the double Nightfall loot week we had the funny guns, and we can just go in there and just absolutely destroy. And so people really needed them. Like, obviously I beat the Nightfall before actually the funny guns glitch came out, and I was in the process of making the video, and then I saw that and I said, well, let me just scrap that, because there's no point when you can just run through with your Amit and your Tarntation and just melt everything, which by the way was fun. It's the most fun I've had playing the game since the 6-man Nightfalls, when you can actually get 2 groups with kind of a connection glitch where you could get everybody in at the same time and get them all into a nightfall at the same time, and just wreck the nightfall with 6 players, which was a lot of fun. And so this is the most fun I've had since then. And I mean, we just tore up the game. Like, as you can see, there was a solo Nezarec and plenty of those videos going around. As you can see, this is what was happening with Crota. I forgot to record my Crota kill, which is exactly the same thing. I pretty much killed him on my own. Like, I don't think anybody else had a heavy grenade launcher shotgun like I did, and I did 12 mil to Crota, and I did it again and again. I did it in all of my 3 runs, but this was the first run that I realized I could do 12 mil with the ammo from my Tarntation and with the supers. And even on my hunter, I was on my hunter, and I was able to pop my super and hit him with the spear, do the grenade launcher damage, by the way, with all of the surges, right? And then hit him with another spear because of how much damage I was doing, generating another super before his phase was even over. We skipped the oversoul. There was no even need to have oversoul, and you just go right into the final damage phase and finish him off with your Amit if you ran out of Tarntation. And again, that's if I was the only one. Now, if everybody had the same thing that I had, he wouldn't even had a chance. He wouldn't even had, like, the ability to even get his sword from overhead swing down to the ground before he was dead, with how much damage you were able to put out in the game. And I'm glad the game was able to hold up and not just crash over and over again because of how much damage we were putting out in a short period of time. I mean, it was just nasty. And what's even better is that now that the situation has changed where we still have the funny guns, you're going to see that we're still melting bosses. This was from today, from Lucky 10P's video of him melting Rolk and having a blast doing it. And I mean, his health bar just disappears. I mean, just look at that. It's like he's paper mache. And this is the same Rolk that we used to sit there and we used to shoot again and again and again with our linears, and again and again and again. And we had div and multiple wells, and he's popping the well, and now he's just a joke. So I'm really glad that this is the situation that Bungie finds himself in, and I really do hope that it affects the right people so that they can understand that they cannot pull this crap with the legendary shards like that, just so cavalier, like it's nothing. They can't even decide to do it the next season. If they're going to do something with legendary shards, they need to give us an entire year to dump our legendary shards, and not this whole we're going to do it next season in like months or weeks, and not a whole entire year. They could have told us this way back at the beginning of Lightfall, like, hey, just so you know, come final shape, we're going to try to have some different type of currency setup. We're going to make these changes and give us more time to dump our legendary shards. But no, they just decided to drop it on us because they know that we're not going to have a whole lot of time to get rid of our shards. We're probably not going to get rid of all of our shards or convert all of them, meaning again we're going to lose time and we're going to lose effort just because they decided that they don't like the situation with the shards that they created. And it's so ridiculous because in so many instances there's been bugs that have been game breaking that have hurt the player, and those take months and months and months to resolve. But when you have a situation like this, it's done in a week or less. And so it just goes to show you their priorities, that they don't go and take care of the player. They're going to go and they're going to take care of themselves first, which is so backwards to me. Because if it were my game, again, if I was the CEO and there was a glitch out that was helping the players, but there was a glitch that was hurting the players, my priority would be to resolve the glitch that was hurting the players first. Even if it was easy, even if it was an easy fix to reduce the amount of helpful glitches, I would still make sure that the hurtful glitch was fixed first, so that way it doesn't look bad to the community, because there's optics involved. It shows that, yeah, let's say that the funny guns was way easier to fix than something that's like progress based, like character losing progress, or the character deletion issue, where people could accidentally delete their characters, and then when they said that they could, they weren't believed until it was proven on video that it is possible. And they could have gone in there and they could have just made a simple change, or they could have made it to where you had to hit a combination of buttons to actually delete your character, and now they have done that to where you actually have to go through and deliberately go through different combinations of inputs to delete your character. And it's not as easy as just spamming to click yes and spamming enter, which is what it was before. When you would get kicked out and if you spammed enter, you could accidentally delete your characters if you ended up on that screen where you could then start from scratch with 3 new characters. So it's just one thing after another, just one of those situations where Bungie, again, could have done the right thing and said, hey guys, you know what? We've seen the response with Legendary Shards. We're going to hold off on this. We're going to give you until the end of Lightfall, or we're going to give you until the very first episode releases in Lightfall after the Lightfall expansion when they go to the next episode. They could have said that too, but they still haven't. They haven't backed down off of this. They've been so busy dealing with the havoc that we've been just absolutely wreaking onto all of the raids, all of the dungeons, and in the background you're going to see me going through and just blasting, Morgith, and blasting, these raid bosses, and just going through each of these scenarios and just absolutely enjoying myself, just melting these bosses. And people again have gotten solo flawlesses. They've gotten solo boss kills from raids. They've gotten achievements that they wouldn't have gotten. They've gone out and done flawless Crota. They've done these things that they wouldn't have necessarily been able to easily do because these weapons have reduced the phases that you would have to fight in the bosses. So you can easily one phase your Yut, for example. Even though you could do it before with optimization, you could do it now without optimization, just with the funny guns. Same thing with Crota. You can get the 2-sword thing done easy. With Iriet, you can do the expunge. You just have to expunge her once and then kill her in that same time, and you get the expunge triumph for her. I'm sure that the lanterns were much easier. The Featherlight triumph was probably much easier. That people were trying to get and go through all those triumphs. The challenge mode that's out on Crota can easily be done probably because of these weapons. Because again, we still have these new weapons. We've got the new Reservoir Burst bow. We've got the Reservoir Burst Amit. We have the ability to have these shotguns that are mixed with snipers that do heavy damage, especially if you are able to get up close and personal to the boss and just shotgun swap between the two. I didn't have Heritage, so I was able to do no Reprieve. That was going to be my primary. And so I got no Reprieve and Nessa with that, so that we could just absolutely melt bosses that way. It's not super helpful for the Nightfall, but again, the Nightfall this week is not very difficult. It's the Devil's Lair Nightfall, and that one is, again, not too difficult. It's been around for a long time. Everybody knows how to clear that one, and it was a nice and easy clear for me this week, too. So, the main thing that I wanted to get across, and if Bungie obviously picks up these videos and they have somebody that's going through these feedback, is that it's super inappropriate for them to have handled the situation with the Legendary Shards the way that they did, to talk about them in such a cavalier way, like it doesn't mean anything, like it doesn't matter, like they're all these these purple spiky things that, it reminds me of when Deej was being very smartass about the weapon parts back in the day, and that started a firestorm, and that was like one of the first big firestorms started by a community manager post, or a TWAB post, about how silly it was that people had all of these weapon parts stored, but they were still our weapon parts. Like, they were still things that we owned. We broke these weapons down. We earned these weapons, and then we broke them down and saved them. And so we're dumb for not spending them, according to Deej. And so that's, again, one of those things that builds up, and Deej moved on, obviously, because of that, because he wasn't cut out to do something like this, because he's too sarcastic and too much of a smartass in situations where he shouldn't be. And so they moved to somebody else, and DMG got his situation. DMG did great until he started to get sassy with people, and I even called him out on a couple of his posts where he was being inappropriate with people. And unfortunately for him, he got into a situation where some crazy nut, forced him out of his role, and went after his family and stuff like that. And obviously he didn't deserve that, but it just goes to show that when you're in a situation where you talk to the community, you have to be very careful about how you pose these things, and you have to really consider the way that people feel about these digital items that may not be as important to you as a community manager, or Bruno, for example, as a community manager now. And you put these things in the post and you talk about them like they're these silly little things and ha ha ha, but it's not that funny, because it ends up being time in the end, and it ends up being people's time, and people value their time, even if it's spent in something as can be seen as meaningless as a game like Destiny, for example. And the way that they have devalued the idea of the game of Destiny and the player experience, it makes it even more meaningless to some on the outside. But if you lived it, if this has been your 10 years of life, if this has been your favorite game, if you've played it every day, every week, it's hurtful to have your time and your efforts demeaned in that way for many people. So I can understand that. And it was definitely a frustrating experience for me to read the TWAB and to go through the TWAB and to find that they weren't going to give us some type of a conversion. Because at first it's like, okay, they're getting Legendary Shards, that's fine, I can always turn them into Rahul later on for Glimmer. But then to find out you can't do that, that crossed the line. And so again, I was cheering on the funny gun situation I normally don't really do a lot of the glitch stuff. I don't make videos about glitch stuff. As you can see, I didn't make a video about the glitch showing people how to do it because I wasn't necessarily trying to, kind of fan that fire per se, but I absolutely was taking advantage of it myself. I was in the Nightfalls, I was in the raids, I was out there just burning through stuff, kind of as my FU to Bungie for trying to take away Legendary Shards like they have. So I hope they back off the Legendary Shards. I really do, even though I've spent a whole bunch of them and I'm going to continue spending them down. I still hope they back off of them and find a way to convert them in the end. If they don't, then obviously you can see what they really think of us as players and our feedback, and I'll remember that, right? Again, we talked about hitting them in their pocket and not spending money on certain things. I had felt pretty good about the changes that were coming from the prior TWAB and the prior situation where Joe came on and talked to us and kind of tried to smooth things out and explained a lot of the things that were coming on, a lot of the cool stuff we were seeing with Final Shape. I pre-ordered Final Shape. Again being lulled into a sense of like, hey, they're actually doing something for us with the strike team and the PvP strike team and all of that, only to be hit by this Legendary Shard thing. So again, until they fix this Legendary Shard issue, until they say they're going to give it back to us, until they say they're going to cancel this Legendary Shard removal, or they're going to make it to where we convert them, I'm not buying anything on the Silver Store. I'm not buying any more of these additional silver expansions, the $1,000 silver bundles where you can get emotes and stuff like that. I'm only buying things with Bright Dust that I've earned in the game as kind of a side as I'm playing, and I'm really not going to do anything in my power. I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure I do not support Bungie financially until they fix this, because again, it's ridiculous that they have the situation with the Legendary Shards, they get this negative backlash, right behind it they have the funny guns, and they're going to address the funny guns, but they're not going to address the Legendary Shards. And the funny guns were fun to us. Like, the players that I played with, everybody that I played with in LFGs were having an absolute blast. And so they're going to take this away from us first before they even get a chance to discuss this Legendary Shards. They had to push back, funny enough, Crota's and Master Raid, they had to push back the new PvP game mode because those modes would be destroyed with these funny gun scenarios, and they want players to see and feel how they're supposed to have been in those environments. Well, yeah, you care about that because you want your work that you've done to hit, but the work that we've done as players, again, with the collecting these Legendary Shards or whatever else other currency that we've had deprecated in the past, there's no we want to preserve the player experience for that. No, they want to just get rid of it because it's more convenient for them, and they're just going to simplify things, and it's going to be cores and glimmer. But they don't increase the sources of cores, they don't increase the glimmer cap, they haven't talked about increasing the glimmer cap, and so it's just ridiculous. And again, I hate making these videos where I'm sitting here and I'm complaining about something that Bungie's doing, but it's just like you can't help it. Like, if you're going to make a video about the week, you cannot not talk about the glimmer situation, and then you can't not talk about the funny guns. And it's just been an amazing week. It's been so much fun. I'm still glad that even after the patch, they still have more work to do, and it's still going to force them to push it on even more. Like, it would be so embarrassing for them if they weren't even able to launch Master Crota until maybe like the final week of the season or something ridiculous like that. And normally I would be pissed off and I'd be frustrated because I couldn't play it myself. But for me, I want to see them in this case struggle, and I want the people who are struggling with the code right now to translate this to the higher ups and saying the reason why the players do these things and the reason why the players have this kind of fuel to go out there and spread this and to create this havoc is because we do these terrible things like removing the Legendary Shards. It's almost like a cause and effect, because I guarantee you if they didn't do stuff like this, the people who figured these things out wouldn't have spread it as quickly. Yeah, it would have gotten out, but it wouldn't have gotten out within hours. Maybe it would have taken days or a week, and they would have had time in that time to discover it and get it reported. But no, because of the way that they treat us with the Legendary Shards and the way they hold back information through the API, they don't want to tell us when we can get stuff on Eververse anymore for Bright Dust, so that we have to buy it with silver, stuff like that. All of those really bad faith things that they've done, that even though they don't maybe mean to do them, if you want to give them the benefit of the doubt, they don't mean to do them that way, that's still how they ended up existing, and that's still how they end up kind of coming out to the players. That's the most important thing, is that they need to realize they need to just stop it. They need to give us more time before they make these sweeping changes. They need to consult the players first. They need to have some type of polling system or voting system, just like they do for the maps. They can do the same thing I could send an email to all players and say, hey, what do you think about this change? Do you want to keep this currency? Do you want to get rid of this currency? Do you want to be convertible? What would you do if we didn't? And just get our feedback and poll the community before making the change instead of saying, hey, surprise, we're making this change. You know what I mean? It's just inappropriate. It's unfortunate. And again, I'm glad that we're still wreaking havoc in the community. I'm glad that we're still wreaking havoc out in the game, and we're busting their code to the point where now we have error codes all day long because they're trying to do everything in their power to put out these little fires, and we're just not letting them do it. So keep up the pressure, keep up, putting them in their place, keep getting on Twitter and letting them know that, hey, we can't accept this. This is not right. You can't just take things from us and not replace them with something else. You can't just take our time and disregard that. And I get that the legendary shards for new players are not a fun thing, and that's totally fine. But that doesn't mean that you have to penalize the people that already have them. You can easily remove the legendary shards, take them off of the table, and still let the players who have them keep them as a consumable that they can turn into glimmer, just like you did with everything else that you deprecated. All you have to do is just turn these into consumables. Maybe every stack of 10 is the 1000 glimmer like before, and we just go over it and hit our interact button over it and delete them, and as we delete them we get our glimmer. That would be perfectly fine. You know what I mean? That would be absolutely perfectly fine. If you wanted to just convert those and have them in our mailbox as soon as the season rolls over, and we can just pick them up from the mailbox and keep them in our inventory so they don't get lost in the mailbox, and again as a consumable, that would have been perfectly fine. Because now the players that have had their time investment in them have them in a consumable, in their stacks, in their inventory, taking up inventory space that they actually choose to devote toward these legendary shards. But no, they just want to deprecate them, just want to take them away. They want to hurt the players as much as they can to get them back, quote unquote, get them back for the glitches and the things that they believe that they took advantage of community wise in the past, which is their fault in the first place for not testing things. There's so many of these players, there's so many people in these discords, there's so many ways that they can reach out and spend a little bit of money and compensate these people that figure these things out so that they can come to them first and work with them before disseminating them to the wider community, and they don't. And those players are not really apt to do that anymore either, because Bungie does these things that are hurtful to the community. So even if that was a thing, even if there was an opportunity for you to be a freelancer and to bring things to Bungie first, it's like, do I really want to do that? Do I really want to squash this so Bungie can squash our fun before we have our fun as a community, when they're already taking our shards away, when they're already doing these other things, when they're already making it to where we can't see what the bright dust is in the store, we have to spend more money here, we have to spend more money there, they raise the price of certain things, of silver, it's just ridiculous. They need to stop. They need to get their house in order. And again, Joe's a nice guy. All these guys that you see on the shows that they come out on Twitch and stuff like that during the showcase, they all seem like really nice people, but they are not very well organized in the way that they deal with player feedback, and they just don't seem to have this like elevation of information to the top. It doesn't even seem like it makes it to Joe, like to say, hey, this is a big player concern, and that should be to Joe's desk within a day. It shouldn't take weeks or months. It shouldn't take weeks or months or a year to get to the point where Joe has to then address it. It should literally be on his desk the next day. This is a player concern. This is the percentage of players that we're getting feedback wise. This is the situation that it's causing. The streamers and the people who are outwardly in the community, kind of the face of the community, are saying these things collectively. It's not just one or two people, it's collectively they're saying these things. So let's take these things seriously and address these things in this week in Destiny, which was the TWAB, which should have stayed the TWAB, which again only got changed because of your pet project Marathon that's taken resources away from Destiny, which got you into this situation in the first place, Bungie. So just stop it, just fix it. And thanks very much, guys, for you dealing with my rant. I really do apologize that I have to put these videos out. I'm going to have a video out of the Nightfall, like I said. I'm going to try to get the story out as well. I was going to try to get the story one done last week, but then the Funny Guns thing happened, so I got no work done last week on videos. And so I'm going to try to catch up this week, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for listening.